Hi, this is Micornus, Phokane, the leader and the founder of the Young Men Empowerment Forum. We are dealing with things that you can control and things that you cannot control in life as a young man. And we speak about this because it's very important for you to differentiate that. Because when you start to differentiate things that are within your control and those things that are not within your control, you live a very peaceful life. And successful people are those that have actually established earlier on in their lives of things that they can control and started working towards controlling that instead of trying to controlling everybody around them. So therefore, if there are things that you cannot control, you cannot focus on them. The people that you cannot, the things that you cannot control, you cannot actually invest your time in things that you cannot control. Because things that you cannot control are waste of time to actually invest time on them in any case, because you're not going to change them. You're not going to control them. You're not going to manage them. So be careful that you don't embark on things that you cannot control and waste a whole lot of time. And sometimes when you get back and want to start doing things that you can control, you don't have enough time anymore. So it's very important, therefore, to know as a young man that you can control your behavior. All right? You can control your behavior. And there are many young men that behave in a certain manner, and they claim not to be able to control their own behavior. And I want to tell you now that each and every behavior that you display, it is actually intentional behavior. You are able to stop it or to decide to continue with it. You are able to manage it in a way that it cannot be out of hand. You can actually restrict it in a certain way or limit it in a certain way. Now, this is type of things that you can actually engage your own behavior in the regard of whether you want to stop that behavior, you want to continue with it, or you want to just limit it to a certain extent, or manage it to say it can only be displayed in certain places, not in certain other places. So also, it is very important for you to say, where do I display this type of behavior? Because there are behaviors that are appropriate for certain environments. And I'm sure you would understand that as a young man. So there are places where you can act in a certain way. There are places where you can therefore not behave in that certain way. And that is why some behaviors are actually acceptable in church environment, for instance, as a young man. And some behaviors are totally not acceptable in church environment. They may be acceptable in a nightclub. And those are type of behaviors, the nightclub behaviors that will be acceptable and everybody will embrace them. But take the same behaviors, bring them to a church environment, you'll realize everybody will frown against that. And the reason is because you are a human being of intelligence and mind. You are a human being who can think and sift all the thoughts and manage and say, I know that it all starts in my thinking. It all starts in my planning of how to I then prioritize my thoughts. And when you do that, then it comes into behavior. How you behave is actually dependent on what you think. Because whatever you think, then you do project it by your behavior. And I want to emphasize that there are those that do things and say, no, it's because my friends have actually made me to behave this way. And some people behave in a certain way and say, no, it's because I was provoked to behave in this particular manner. I want you to stop and think about it. Because you are not a robot, say. You are not just actually an instrument. You are not a pup. You are not actually something that's an object that can be used in a way that people want to use it. Remember that as an individual, you decide how to behave. And I want to emphasize that as a young man, you need to know that your behavior is something that you can control. That you don't behave and come and tell people that I'm apologizing because I found myself behaving that way. No, there's nothing like that. And that is why then things like the addicts, like drugs and things that cause addiction like alcohol and, for instance, things that actually twist the mind and make people not to think straight. These things are becoming dangerous in people's lives because they're actually making people, or rather putting thoughts in people, and therefore silence the conscience and make people, therefore, to behave in a certain manner that they later regret. But I'm still saying that you have got a control, one, of deciding whether to take those drugs or not. That's the behavior. You can actually decide as well whether to take that alcohol or not. Now, because the behavior that results out of that, you cannot blame alcohol out of that because you've got a full control of your own behavior. Now, as a young man, I want to emphasize that please remember that you need to be cognizant of every single behavior that you display. Some of the behaviors are actually untoward and they're actually dangerous to yourself. You are actually placing yourself in danger by behaving in a certain manner. But remember also that some behaviors are actually dangerous to other people. They may not be directly to you, but actually dangerous to other people as well. So all those type of behaviors must be calculated in a way that if I behave this way, what will be the results? You must always be cognizant of that. Now, wisdom is ability actually to put things in perspective. And as a young man, I want to teach you to learn to put things in perspective so that you can actually be responsible for your own behavior. And don't blame others for a certain way that you've behaved and blame alcohol and substances and so on. That is because of them that I behaved this way. Don't blame friends as well and say, I've behaved this way because of peer pressure. Remember, you've got a choice of how to behave. And therefore, it is very important for you to behave in a certain manner that you have decided to behave in. And be responsible of that. Don't be embarrassed of your own behavior later because you've chosen of how to behave. Remember, it's the behaviors of other people that you cannot control. The problem with us in life is because sometimes we want to be responsible and we want to control other people's behaviors. And I want to emphasize the fact that when you start to indulge in a place where you want to control other people's behaviors, then you become what we call control freak. And that is why it becomes very, very unacceptable, even in relationships, where you want to control on how your spouse should behave. You want to control on how they should actually do things. Now, remember that they are people of their own. Though it's your spouse, but it's the people of your own. And I want you to remember, as a young man, this is sometimes what causes also what we call abuse of spouses and abuse of loved ones. And the reason is because you want your loved one to think like you, and you want them, therefore, to behave in a way that you want them to behave. And remember, they are people of their own in the sense that they decide on how to behave. And you've got control, you've got no control of that. They may behave in a manner that is embarrassing to you, but of course, they may behave also in a manner that is not acceptable by you, but it's their behavior anyway. So therefore, be careful of not being a control freak, of wanting to control people on how they should behave. And that is why many people that try to control people, they are miserable. Because you try to control people on how they should behave, but you actually making yourself a very miserable soul. And people are trying to police other people's behavior. You cannot be able to do that. Because even though the person may be your spouse, you may still not be able to control their behavior because you cannot police somebody's behavior. And I want to also emphasize as a young man for you to understand, because some of you might be having kids of your own. Some of you might be planning to have kids, that even when they are your children, they're going to behave in their own way. They're not going to behave like you. They're not going to be like you. And that is why many people would say, pastors don't give birth to pastors. So therefore, it shows that we are unique people. Even our children becomes unique. So you cannot expect a child of a pastor to become a pastor. It doesn't work that way. So therefore, it is actually the behavior of an individual that you must acknowledge the fact that you cannot control that. Now, as a young man, you are a wise young man if you are aware that you can control your own behavior, but you cannot control other people's behaviors. Don't be a master of everybody. Don't be a control freak. Don't become a dictator upon people's lives and want people to behave your way style or your style, your own style or your way. People behave their own way and they decide to behave their own way. And that's what makes people unique. And that's what makes this world to be a pleasure, because we are not the same, therefore, and we are not behaving the same way. So please, let's welcome that and be aware that we can never behave the same way. And therefore, because we are not the same, we cannot behave the same way. So please, you can control only your behavior. You cannot control other people's behavior. And I want you to take cognizance of that as a young man. I want to end up here today, your host, Micornus Phokane. Thank you very much for listening to us and being part of this great topic. And of course, we move on to part 5 tomorrow, which will be rounding off this topic. I hope you're learning out of this. I hope you are getting some information that transition or change your life. And we will catch up tomorrow once more. But before I check out, remember our Facebook page, Young Men Empowerment Forum. Like that page, like the Facebook page, Micornus Phokane as well. Make sure that you also click notification buttons on those so that you're notified when we've posted material of this kind. Don't forget our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel under Micornus Phokane. Google us there and get Micornus Phokane on YouTube. You'll get our material there. And we post a lot of material there to help you as a young man, because that's very important for your life. Your life is very much of a concern to us, and we would love to build you and develop you as a young man and become an extraordinary young man in this life. Thank you very much for listening to us and being part of this great topic. Please allow me to check out right here and say cheers for now.